right. All right. We're here. Here we are. We're back. It is Monday, April 21st. It is the Monday after Easter. Um, it is noon now. Man, I wake up and I feel like the day, I'm like, oh, there's so much time to do everything. And then there's no time for anything. Like everything crams its way into the day somehow or another. That's fine though. It is what it is. Welcome to the HEF podcast. That is the podcast of the Home Education Foundation. The Home Education Foundation is an organization started by the amazing Brenda Dickinson. If you haven't heard of her, you have lived under a rock for like 40 years. And I was one of those people who lived under that rock. And then I met Brenda, and now I couldn't help it. I had to start working with Brenda. She was so amazing. The work that she's done over the last 40 years to both make home education legally recognized in Florida and work with senators and representatives and legislators to understand the needs of parents and the rights and responsibility that they have before God to teach their own children and spell that out and protect it in statute. She's done an awesome job, and I love her for it. And that is why we're here, and that is why our sponsors are on board too. We want to give a special shout out to all of our sponsors. First, today, we usually start with our top sponsors, but today I want to thank the parents. Parents of Florida, you love your children, and that is amazing, especially those of you who are home educators. You are parent educators. You take matters into your own hands. You Lewis and Clark your way through their education with hatchets and tools and saws and math problems, and you're amazing. And supporting and loving your own children is the best thing that you can do to fix everything wrong in our society. We're in it for the long game, and I love you for being in it with us. And I thank all of the parents that I see their donations come in from our support page at flhef.org/support. I see the $5 and $10 a month that come in. And I know that you're with us arm in arm as we stand in the Capitol and be your voice. And I want to say thank you to you for that. And I want to thank our top sponsors as well for coming on board. Arete, FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, and a TBHC Group. It is a no small thing to be a top sponsor. It is quite an endeavor. And we thank you for being with us and doing that. We are so close to being able to reach a point where we have the funding to kind of go all in. We're very close. People don't always know this. I'm going to do full screen for everybody now so they'll see us. Yay, there we go. People don't always know it, but we all still have our day jobs. and, and we do this work, and it is quite the load.
Time consuming.
Yeah.
And the weight.
It is.
I got told Jason walking out of one of the meetings a couple of weeks ago, I said, my shoulders are feeling a whole lot lighter. And he looked at me and I said, it's kind of partly the mantle on you now and not solely on me. It's like one of those weighted things that people use for their children that are going kind of crazy. It's like keep you in line.
Yeah.
But the weight that we carry to protect parental rights in Florida is unbelievable. If you miss a committee meeting, you miss a word in a bill. Oh my goodness, you feel like you are totally responsible for all of that.
I've definitely been carrying that weight. So I know exactly what you're talking about, but I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest. I've always been a bit of a maverick. I think Dina, and I love her for it, but she calls me a rebel. And now she's like, you're a rebel with a cause. And I'm like, Dina, you get me. I've always needed something to kind of anchor me into a fight. I love a good fight, but this one I think matters immensely. And those moments of finding that second wind where you take one to the gut and then you got to get back up. I really it takes something meaningful and purpose driven to kind of hit that place of grit and pull you up. And I have that. I love this fight. I love families. Um, I really am passionate about fatherhood and freedoms. And I think maybe if I had one complaint, just even for the homeschool uh, history that I grew up with, as a my mom did a lot of the homeschooling because we had a split family, and I hear it echoed out even at FPEA Day. Senator McLean said this. He was like, "I have 11 children, but you'd say it wrong if you say I did the homeschooling." It was mostly my wife, and I've got to be honest. My wife is my logistics person. She keeps me on track. She keeps everything on track, and she does a huge amount of the home education in our family. Um, but there's just something about being a dad and being in it and watching their character and their minds and everything grow that is so different from how fast paced and jumping from one thing to the next, and embracing our ADD and changing this and that, and the lack of discipline. There's just something about being a father involved in all that, slowing things down and having those deeper conversations that I want every father to have, that the ability to do that, the freedom and the choice to figure out their own way in their own life, and their own family, and do it different, by that freedom, that by that measure of freedom that they have, take it and run with it. That not by default does any child get stuck into a classroom and taken from you and taught whatever the state decides they want to teach them. I want, truly, truly, deeply believe that our society would be so much better if we had strong fathers taking up that mantle and leading the way and educating their children. Um, yeah. So that's not what I was thinking we would start with.
Going back to the
Yeah.
rebel, going back
Yeah.
to the rebel, we wouldn't have home education if there weren't
That's
some
true.
rebels, because
That's true.
at the time we set out, there was a group of people to change and create a new pathway. We had to be rebels because there was no pathway, and we risk our children being
Yes.
taken away, or us being charged with truancy because we didn't fit into the paths that were already there. So to pull your children out of public school or even private school where you just
Mhm.
have hands off and take it on yourself, there has to be an element of a rebel in your spirit to
You're
do
you're
that.
absolutely right, and
But
you are
fun.
from an era of like gritty. I love it when I watch you pull the. Don't be offended by this, but the like direct old lady. Like I can say what I want to say, but you just come at it. So it takes a bit of a rebellious spirit
Well, you
to
do it
speak.
gracefully.
Yeah.
You really
Well,
do.
thank
You
you,
do.
Crystal.
I mean it in love. You do though. And I've watched you do it, and I think it's something I won't be able to pull off because when I speak that way, people shut down. But I think that um you have been in the right place for such a time as was needed. And I think you have that, not like angry rebellious spirit, but you have enough of that speak your mind in confidence. What did he was it Roosevelt who said, speak softly but carry a big stick? Your words are quite the stick sometimes, but you do speak softly with them, and you've got just that way about you. And I've been learning a lot from you. You are um, becoming one of my greatest mentors, I think, and I appreciate you for that immensely. And
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
I hope I can
I
fulfill that
appreciate all
role
the years of work that
well.
you've put into applying that spirit that God's given you to protecting home education families all through Florida. And it's a unique.
When you know you're right and you know you're standing on principle, you just don't back down. You may have to compromise here or there on a word or two, but you just keep saying the same thing over and over, and they realize you're not going to
Mm.
back down. So they better
But
listen
see,
to
that's
you.
just it. You have that spirit where you're able to claim that. I think a lot of in our time, there's a lot of people who, um, myself included at times, have been tempted to sit back and go, well, maybe I don't know as much as I think I do. And maybe I need to shut up and listen, especially as boys. That's what we're taught early on. You've talked enough. The patriarchy has said its thing. Like, sit down and shut up. And that's why you hear that constantly. And I just appreciate you for having that place where you boldly draw that line and go, you're wrong. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Um, and I appreciate that you have wielded that in a way that has been for the betterment of our society. It has protected parents' rights in Florida, especially when it comes to education rights, and that has just kind of stuck with me. Um, so much so that I think other states, could have benefited from having someone like you, including Alabama, where I grew up. And there are, there's a lot of, I don't want to call it fear mongering, but there's a lot of stories right now in the media. Illinois has got some issues. There are other states that are struggling. I think a lot of the reason why the scholarship has had such a tumultuous start in Florida is because of the history of what it's done in other places, and they didn't have a Brenda. That you had a moment in time where you saw a need in a way that maybe others saw the need but then thought it's too much work for me, or how could I do that? And you just dove in. And at a couple of times I know in talking with you, you've wanted to move on, and I think we're in a good place now. And then you get pulled back in by another need because you see that need and you just take it on. And that it it's hard to look at things from a policy standpoint in other states and go, oh, well, this is the way that homeschooling is going. And it's like, yeah, but we have a wrench in that, in the cogs of that. And that wrench was Brenda, and she gummed up the works. And, and she's always been able to clear out some of that mess and find that language that would have caused such problems and halted progress until that was fixed. And now it runs smoothly. And there's rights, and they're carved out. They're spelled out in statute, and that's so important. It doesn't mean that everything's perfect. I don't mean to make it sound that way, because
There's a
there's
lot
a
of
lot of
moving
moving parts,
parts.
and there's still a big intent for abuse. I think that anytime people who crave power positions of power tend, keep an eye on them because they tend toward abusing that power. That it's just so easy. And as much as people love Trump, or love when their team is the win, is you got a super majority, I think we still even have to be watchful and careful over that, because the tendency of, what do they say, what is it, ultimate power corrupts ultimately, or something. Is that absolute power absolutely
Uh,
corrupts, or something? Yeah.
yeah, something
Yeah,
along that line.
it has to continue to be watched. And so while we do have things in a good place, we do need to keep an eye on it. And I think one of the things I wanted to bring up today and talk about keeping an eye on was the um, Make Homeschool Safe Act. It is, um, I think it's going to be new to a lot of people, but it's not new to me. I've kind of been on to them for a while. And then there's the two-edged sword here, where do you address it and talk about it, but then in talking about it and addressing it, people are going to Google it and look it up, and then they're going to get attention and traction on their website, and on and on and on. And what that does is then it weighs the Google algorithms and search to weigh more heavily to feeding that information to more people because it sees it as relevant. So I really hesitate to even, it's like talking about it and putting it out there also makes it something that gets more attention because of that. And I would rather it not get attention. I'd rather us put forward the Tell Your Story project and let people tell what homeschooling and home education looks like for them, and get all of that into the algorithm so that people become more aware of the benefits and the beauty of the freedoms and the advantages that they have and the data that comes out of those advantages, and not get caught in stories of trauma and hurt, and that be all we focus on. Because where we do put the focus is where we end up going. The algorithm will make sure of that. The Google, these are tools, right? Algorithms that all they do is parse what is searched a lot and what seems to be relevant when searched, and then it feeds you more of that. And so as we talk about these things, and they use that fine-tooth comb to sift all the information in the world, and the more people Google it, the more it's going to show up. That's why projects like ours don't necessarily seem like a big deal, but they are massive, because it's incremental changes and creating content that's thin sliced and searchable, and then the more energy and activity that it takes up in the searchable space, the more opportunity when people searching have to go, oh, well, this isn't so bad. Why do people hate on this so much? Or, oh, they have the opposite opportunity. So that the Make Homeschool Safe Act is aimed at making regulations, and I would probably say oversight is a word that they use a lot. Oversight. But it really comes down to regulations. I had a really interesting conversation with Google Gemini about a year ago. It was an hour long, and we went back and forth because I was drilling it on, what is this, and why are they wanting to take away rights? And they're like, well, they don't want to take away rights. They just want to provide oversight. I'm like, okay, and what good is oversight if you're not holding them accountable? Oh, well, there is accountability. That's the point of oversight. Okay, great. So then as you provide that oversight and accountability, you put regulations. They're like, yeah, regulations. And that narrows people's rights. It goes, yeah. And I'm like, so you're taking away their rights? And they're like, no. And I'm like, let's double back again and have that conversation. And it's funny because the AI overview that I got today, which is based off of Gemini, when I was searching it up, actually spelled it out this time and said it. It's a model bill designed to increase oversight and regulation. And so it's interesting how even having that conversation and flagging it as informative teaches the AI tool that it didn't quite have the right definition. It's cool to see that kind of impact, but it's important for parents to know what this is, and understand, be able to peel it back. They are concerned parents aren't safe for their kids. They're concerned parents can't help their kids learn, and they're concerned that they'll limit their resources and ability to succeed in life if it's left up to the parents.
Except, wait a minute, most of these people were homeschooled,
Yeah.
and they're lawyers and journalists and extremely successful people.
I was just going to make that same point, that from what I understand, most of them are former homeschooled kids who basically decided that they didn't like the religious values their parents had homeschooled them with. And so they're coming at this from the angle of no kid should have to go through that kind of environment. And yet, as Brenda pointed out, they are successful,
Highly successful.
highly successful individuals as a result of being
Yeah.
homeschooled.
It's kind of like,
So what they want to do is expand their sociability so they can have all kinds of ideas that are being taught right now in the public schools. They're not family values. And so basically they've rebelled. And so you can follow a group of rebels who don't like family, don't like religion, and don't like the culture of family and safety. So they're saying we want safe environments for these kids. So let's put them in the public schools.
Let's make homeschooling safe by removing it.
Or having visits from DCF to make sure you're not a criminal and abusing your children. Now, wait just a minute. Is it DCF's right to come in and say, without any reports of any abuse or anything, that we're going to make sure you're parenting correctly? No, we're not going to stand for that. If somebody abuses their child, it isn't a home education issue. It's a different issue that parents are basically criminals.
Yeah,
so then we deal with them with criminal laws. We don't deal with them whether they're being educated or not.
You're doing it now.
There are abusive parents in every attendance track.
That's right. Yeah. I said you're doing it now. I have stirred up Mama Bear, and I love it.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. No, don't apologize. I love it.
One of the interesting things about this, you said it was a model bill, which I think it might be worth pausing on what that actually means. Because this is not like one bill that is being passed in one state. It is like an organization that is essentially trying to replicate this language into bills across the nation.
It basically is a spelled out agenda of what.
Yeah, it's kind of like a template that they're trying to push into bills in various states. And in some of the instances I heard of, the language that they are pushing in is not necessarily including everything in every bill, but they're trying to slip stuff in that would be incredibly intrusive, would require permission to home educate, all kinds of things. And so it's something to watch, the model bill, and then also to watch your individual state of where that might be slipped into
and
other
watch
bills.
Watch your local, because getting on, and I love that Senator McLean was at FPEA Day, and he was asked, what can parents do? How can we get involved? And his answer was great. He said, "How many of you know who's on your school board?" And there were no hands up in that room. And I was like, "Ooh, we got work to do." Because how many of you have served on a school board? Oh, we have work to do.
No hands.
Who's walked in a campaign? Like he kind of went down a list of things, and I think that for if we're going to make homeschool safe, really, we need to be involved in the process of helping those who govern and write the laws or make the rules or put this policy in place understand it better. And that's why the Tell Your Story project is so critical as a part of this, because it gives you something to refer to when having any of these conversations. Sometimes we share something with someone when we're walking on a campaign, or sometimes we have an email that we send and we go, "Hey, check this out. This is, what we do." And building that up is a part of it, but then building the relationships with those people so that they care about seeing that is also key, right? And trying to help do both of those things is why we're creating our Discord server. So we have the Tell Your Story project and our Discord server. And one of the things,
real quick, before you dive into the Discord, I just wanted to say, I think just the statement that you should get involved with the school board scares a lot of parents. I think that in the home education community, there's this attitude in a lot of the arenas of home education where we want to stay as far from the school board as possible. We want to attract as little attention to ourselves as possible. We want to stay under the radar. I wouldn't touch the school board with a 10-foot pole. Like, it has nothing to do with me. I'm over here just homeschooling my kids. But the reality is that what Brenda accomplished over these past 40 years was by getting involved. And there's not really a way to protect the rights without that. So, and the more of us get involved, the more of an impact we can have from all kinds of different angles.
That's actually...
we don't necessarily have to be on the school board, but educating your school board members, as Jason's saying, using the Tell Your Story project, or just telling your story to a school board member. So when they're elected, go talk to them. And some of them are going to be a party different than your party, but they're human beings. And generally, as public servants, they're going to treat you with kindness and they're going to listen. And you can be their person that they ask if something is true or not if you get to know them personally. Invite them to one of your meetings if you have any local meetings with homeschoolers or classes, so they get to understand the home education programs. I have several stories to tell. I don't want to take away from you talking about Discord, but back in the early 90s, we had a different person move into the position of the Department of Education, home education contact there. And after a couple of months with people calling her, and she didn't feel like she really understood. So she called me and said, I don't understand home education. She was a public school kindergarten teacher. And she said, could I see some of those programs so I understand what I'm dealing with?
Don't show her.
I said, absolutely.
Don't let her in.
That's scary to a lot of people. Because there's this belief that showing it is going to invite some sort of scrutiny or opposition. Yeah.
Well, after a whole day of field trips with her to 5 different homes, she was a believer. I mean, it was all different kinds of approaches to home education. And after that, we had a friend in the Department of Education. She couldn't defend us and educate people well enough, or she could overcome any kind of thing that people tried to say about home education. She was an advocate. So you can get an advocate on the school board. We had a situation where Alachua County was writing policy, and the policy was really bad. And somebody called me and said, you might want to, weigh in on this one. So I called one of the school board members that I happened to have heard her name through another association that I was a part of. And I called her and I said, I understand y'all are passing or considering passing some policy. And I think it's contrary to state law. And I would like to provide you with some information. And so she said, well, I'm going to see if I can get you on the agenda. And so she set up for us to have homeschoolers come and speak at the public meeting. We had about 100 people show up to speak, and they limited it to a minute for everybody except me. And so when the head of the school board, who happened to be an African-American public school teacher in her prior life to being on the school board, she said, now, some of you didn't take up your full time, so I'm going to let her speak. She gave me about 20 minutes. I passed out the law. I gave her an education about the law. And then the superintendent speaks up and says, well, we homeschooled our children.
Nice.
And the attorney was like, okay, now he's the one that we talked to at the Superintendent's Association now. And I said, well, what I'd love to do is set up a task force so that we can have some homeschoolers involved. This public school can have representatives. We want to take care of addressing your issue, but we don't want to overstep and take rights away from homeschoolers. So they did. They set up a meeting. We had a meeting, and it turned out that 2 of the people on the committee were very friendly to homeschoolers, and I'd worked with one of them before in helping set up the Florida Virtual School. So basically, they all just listened, and we crafted a very good policy. And they write policy for home education. So it's really important to get to know those school board members. And you don't have to attend every meeting. If you could, take a day or 2 and walk during the campaigns for those that you've gotten to know that support, wonderful, because those people move on to be the next level of public servants. Generally, they'll run for legislative office and then maybe become senators. And so you're training your people early on. I agree with them. I also agree that the reason we have so many rights in Florida, the initial ones were won when it was Democrat House, Senate, and governor's office, which is nothing short of a miracle. Jason will understand.
Yes.
But then the next level of rights we got because people were out there working in campaigns, and we elected homeschool friendly people. Some of them were homeschoolers themselves, and so we have continually built in Florida leadership in both the House and Senate and the governor's office that support parental choice. And home education is one of the main things. Now, the reason they're having a problem in Illinois is because they're all Democrats and they all hate school choice. So, this maybe could have been avoided had homeschoolers gotten out there and worked in campaigns. Early on, our people were well known with the legislators because they had been in those campaigns working diligently to get the people that agreed with school choice. We didn't call it school choice back in the day, but it was a choice. Home education was a school choice, and it was the first school choice. But every time they get to know your children and the character of your children, it changes their minds. So any exposure you can get person.
I love that you pointed that out, because I think that your children are your best resume and the impossible thing to fake. You cannot. When your children are removed from you and they speak about you, man, oh man, like it reveals so much about who the parents are, the way that their children speak or the way that they act. It shows a lot. It is uniquely different among. I mean, I can't say all homeschool kids are good because their parents are good. Blah blah blah. Man, we get some feral people out there. Like it runs the spectrum, and so does your freedoms to teach your children and raise them in the way that you see fit. And I do think it's interesting that people their children do speak. So when you can have them around and they can have adult conversations with other adults and they can intermingle with adults, while maybe other children run around with TikTok brain or they're looping some dance that they saw on the sidewalk and what's trending. It's noticed. That difference is stark now, very stark. Crystal, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think the importance of that involvement is lost in our generation because these rights have only been around 40 years at most, right? Most of them were developed during that 40-year period and not even for the full 40 years. But people in my generation who are now home educating their children, I was not home educated. And when I was in elementary school, there were one or two odd children who came for PE, and we were like, who are these homeschool kids, right? But it's I think that in our desire for privacy and to be left alone to do what we want to do, our desire for freedom, combined with, I'm just going to say it, our ignorance of what it cost and what had to be done to make these freedoms possible, we've lost our understanding of the importance of staying involved. And so I don't want to step on any toes because I have a lot of friends who are very hands off and like, I don't want anyone to know what we're doing. We're off grid, right? But the danger of that is that you don't have a voice then. You don't have a voice other than us because we're there trying to represent you. But we need parents' voices too. Like they need to know you. We cannot personally convince every single legislator. You need to be working with them in your districts. They need to know who you are. And these stories that Brenda is telling, and there's one in the comments too. Brevard Homeschool Evaluation said she had a neighbor who works in education watch them for a day too, and it worked. She convinced the neighbor. So I think you cannot underestimate the importance of that impact of just getting involved locally. It's never going to amplify the way it needs to if it's just a few isolated voices rather than all of us getting involved in our local
governments. There is a sentiment that is a part of the history of homeschooling, quote unquote homeschooling, which is like leave us alone and let us do our thing. And I think that's fine and dandy. Like if I had to put, you got public education and private education, and the most extreme form of private education is I do it by myself. Like my kids say, I do it by myself. And I think that's wonderful. And I think that whole spectrum of freedom versus, help, right? So it's like you're doing it by yourself, and then there's a version of that where like, it'd be nice to have some help or work with people and collaborate on something. Let's do that. Let's cooperate. Oh, we call those co-ops. And, you know, and every step along the way, it inches and inches and inches toward some bigger system like a school. And I think that the kind of core idea is, leave us alone and let us do our thing. And that's been the history of the heart, maybe, of homeschooling. But I think something that got thrown out with the bathwash, how the baby goes out with the bathwash, is that all involvement goes, right? Leave us alone, and we don't want to be involved either. And I think that's where we've missed in a lot of ways historically, is we have left up the involvement to a handful of people, and most of us don't know who those people are. Like a lot.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that there's 155,000 home education students in Florida, and there has been zero support. Like, I don't want to indict anyone. There's been very little support of the actual lobbying efforts to protect homeschooling through the last 40 years. The most recent support we've got has been phenomenal. It has seemingly come out of nowhere, and it's wonderful. So I don't mean to slap anybody on the wrist here, but there's a gap, a big gap. And it's dawned on me that some of it is knowledge. We don't know what's going on. We don't know how to get involved. Maybe I get that urge, like Crystal, you were talking the other day about how like sometimes when you watch a good movie or a good episode on a TV show, you get the urge to write another story, and you're like, oh, you get that. But if that's met with a lack of knowledge of how, where do I start? Where do I even begin? Or what do I do this? Then it fizzles very quickly. And so I think that might be part of the problem, is that we have a knowledge gap. How do I get involved? Where do I plug in? Everything is so big and complex, and I agree with you. It is. There's a lot going on. There's even more than you can Google to know about that's going on behind the scenes, and who knows who, and this information, and what's trending in other places, and how it makes its way here, and what happens here as a result reciprocates back, and it addresses other places. And now the Tim Tebow Act is in other states being enacted and adopted so that homeschool kids can play sports in the public schools. And there's so many shifts in that involvement, or sorry, in that, I guess I would call it cultural discourse or public cultural discourse, where we're impacting and influencing each other as time goes by, and as we do things, and they go, hey, wait, homeschooling is not so bad. And hey, wait, these kids might not be so socially inept. And hey, wait, they can actually talk with adults and have conversations. And hey, wait, they're actually good hires, and they have a decent work ethic. And hey, wait. And then as that kind of comes in, it shifts the overall conversation. But it can very quickly turn with one bad idea, or one seemingly good idea with bad unintended consequences. So getting involved and being involved is important. And I think pivoting back to that part of the conversation that you brought up, this is one of the issues early on that we faced with the scholarship program. And I was having a wonderful conversation with a parent from Pensacola area, and he was very reticent. He was very vocal about not necessarily being very trusting of the scholarship and the way that it's being handled. And, there are always strings attached. And, we kind of whittled to the point where like, well, we never want money without accountability. And it's like, yeah. And so we would go back and forth. And eventually I just said, I think people like you need to be in the program. You need to be in the scholarship, because people like you are watchful like a hawk, and you don't mind speaking up and saying, no, you can't take that choice away from me. I'm a parent, and that's my choice. And whether I'm in the scholarship or not, should be my choice. And those people like you are wonderful for this program versus people who just, oh, tell me what box to check and I'll do it. Tell me what I need to do next and I'll do it. And they don't critically think, they don't analyze, they don't second guess anyone or question it. They just simply accept. I'm like, we need people like you as a naysayer in the program because that matters. Having that kind of feedback voice inside a program so that when they're asking, hey, what's working for you? What's not working for you? What is this or is that? Your voice is there kind of leading the way. And you may wake up some other people who might have just been going with the flow, and your disagreeable self emerges and says, hey, no, don't take that. And other people go, hey, wait, yeah, like he said, and there's benefit to the dissonant voices from just being like going with the flow and letting things automatically change. So I would say the get involved part of, do we get involved or do we stay clear and don't touch it? I think get involved, but be uniform. Be uniform. Find that place. It's kind of fractured the homeschool community in Florida a little bit, but find that place where we do agree. And if I could submit for consideration, the place that I think we all agree is that the parent is the ultimate authority over standards and curriculum for their children, period. That the parent is the one with the authority and the responsibility to make those decisions. And we need to always have that recognized, whether it's in the scholarship or not in the scholarship. And we stand firm on that line. I think that line is critical. And to be not involved, but then see a giant wave of, maybe people who are used to being in a system, used to going down the halls with their quiet fingers up and raising their hands in classrooms. And this is the way that we go. This is the flow of a hallway, and the traffic goes down this side or that side of the hallway, and your locker is on this side, not that side. And this is just the way. We question that way enough from within that, it doesn't have to be the way it's done. Parents' rights don't necessarily have to get trampled. But we need to be unified as we stand up for that. And I would submit that being involved in I'm sorry, Brenda. I know I'm stroking my beard. I'm sorry. Oh, I caught myself. I'm sorry.
Good.
You've got the fidget ring. Use the fidget ring.
I think that it's critical, though, to be involved and to be at least be unified with one another on that singular focus, which is that the parent should be the authority.
Yeah. I know we need to talk about the Discord and forum, but before we hop over to that, there was one comment from Jennifer Tyson Scott. She said, I'd love to see a curriculum to empower our children how to get involved and how to lobby for what is important for our future. Any recommendations? Can we do a class in our co-op to teach our children? And then she said, I've seen student advisory groups in 4-H and other volunteer organizations. So, I mean, maybe that's something we could think about, is creating some resources that could be used for that, because this is important. And I think the information for how to get involved on the granular level locally is not as easy to find. So maybe that's something that we could talk, as HEF kind of talk about how to make that information more accessible to parents, so that they could do, if they wanted to do a class in a co-op.
Because I know that there are quite a number of really cool learning modules or curriculum that are out there. Teen Pact is awesome, but they kind of focus on the later, not the earlier. But there are some good. PragerU has some cool videos and information that they've queued up. And
even if we just kind of create a source page on our website for where people can find,
we might be able to pull some of those resources together. So keep a lookout for that. We'll work on something like that as a bit of a. It's not going to be a curriculum per se, because there's so much out there that's already. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. The information about how it works has how it works. Desiree Tarango says the Patriot Academy is a great one too. That's cool. And you know what? This is the beauty of homeschooling and doing the podcast live versus pre-recorded is, if you have some that you recommend, dump them in the comments. Please, by all means, go right ahead. Put them right into the comments.
Yeah. put them in the comments, or you could also, email them or message them to us later, because maybe we can just compile a resource list that we can make available on our site. Because like Jason said, there's no need to reinvent the wheel when there's really good resources already available, but parents may not know where to find those. So,
well, I think if we start with the Secretary of State Division of Elections, they can tell you who's running in your district. So you can start at the local level there. They have school board races and everything listed. You just need to pick up the phone and say, I want to come and talk to you about your stands on whatever your issues are, especially home education. But even if sometimes they're only Democrats running in the district and there's no chance of a Republican winning because of the way they've designed the district so that there's kind of a balance in the legislature. In Tallahassee, the lady that is a representative here is a Democrat, and the homeschoolers in Jefferson and Madison County love her. And so they were out working in her campaign because she helps them. She's figured out that homeschooling is a good choice for them. And so she's all supportive of their rights and has helped them in a number of cases. So, so just because somebody happens to be a different party doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't deserving of your attention to help them. You just pick the best one of them. I've walked in Democrat campaigns as well. It was a Democrat that was going to win. We just wanted the best one to win. So
I think that in the response back to the question as well, as far as recommendations or teaching a class or a curriculum, I always struggle with information that's boring. And that's why I think storytelling is so important. Even when we're working with senators and legislators, if there's a way to tell them, like, oh, by the way, there's a homeschool community down in Coconut Creek that's dealing with this very issue, suddenly their ears perk up. And suddenly they care more because they go, wait a minute, what's happening down there? And they get this story. So when it comes to teaching how it works or how to be involved, I think connecting the dots for how someone did get involved and the change made is so key. Storytelling that is so important. And that's one of the reasons, again, why doing the podcasts each week is something that I'm very keen on. I don't want that information to die down. And if there's a way that maybe we could make the podcast more interesting for our younger audience who might be watching with mom or with dad or something, I'm all ears for that, because that's really truly one of the things I hope. This podcast gets very much attention from like January to June or January to May, usually through the legislative updates. But the rest of that time, I intend for it to be something that's a bit more keeping the stories connected, keeping those connections alive, and understanding how things work and making it matter, the history of it. Originally, that was called the Ask Brenda podcast. So, because I just wanted to get on here and ask you all of these kinds of questions, but I think we're going to start bringing some more people on to kind of tell their part of the story and tell some of their history and see blend that kind of content into this so that people can see how getting involved helps. Just very quickly, I don't want to belabor that point too much, but when I first got here, we landed in the house that we landed in because somebody helped us unpack and move, and he was a realtor, and then he helped us find this house, but our neighbor is his broker, and that broker, the real estate broker, is also on the board for Ducks Unlimited, and he just randomly invites me to one of their fundraisers, and I get to the fundraiser, and who do I run into but Senator Simon's aide? And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, hey, that's great. Awesome, we should connect. And we did, in fact, connect, and that's why 248 is where it is today, trying to protect and rewrite the words to open up the, maybe not open up, but it's already there and spelled out, but make it more clear,
clarify.
To clarify that home education students are supposed to be able to play at any school in the district, because that was being denied in several districts, and some not so. But and then they got that story, a couple of stories that we shared with them, and they suddenly cared about it. And you can see how, like, just being involved in going and showing up in places and being involved really does lead to outcomes that change.
Sometimes that you wouldn't
No,
have
yeah, I wouldn't
predicted.
have
Yeah.
seen that coming. I wouldn't have seen that coming. But it's fascinating stuff. Um, Last 10 minutes of the podcast, so let me get to some housekeeping stuff. Um, we've had a great conversation today about how to be involved. One of our goals here is to make that more comfortable, maybe, for parents. I want to help isolate that gap between when somebody gets the inspiration to go, hey, I want to be involved, but I don't know where to start. I want to help isolate that and supply resources for that moment, so that as a parent or someone listening, or even a teenager who goes, man, I care about this, do I have to wait until I have kids to do anything? No, you don't, right? And that's one of the reasons why I've picked Discord to be the server. We got an announcement a couple of weeks back that Wix, who we do our website hosting through, is discontinuing the forum. So all of the information that we have been putting into the forum and all the wonderful conversations that have been happening there, and all the uses for it, were going to go by the wayside. And so I'm a bit of a gamer nerd from back in the day, so I'm used to tools like Discord, but I wasn't quite sure our community would adopt it very well. And after talking to a number of parents who are kind of leaders in their own communities, and like, oh man, my kids use that and they love it. I use that for my own thing and I love it. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, maybe this is not such a bad idea then. Maybe there is that younger generation of homeschoolers who are tech savvy and tech ready, but they just need something to dive into. So I've been working on building a platform, and what it does is there is a category in there for every it's not even a category, it's a space for every county in Florida. So if you want to dive into this server, when you log in for the first time and you set it up, you'll be taken through an onboarding questionnaire, and as you question, it'll give you access to certain areas. So you can see everything if you want to see it, or you can just see what applies to you and your county and the local stuff. And my hope is that it helps facilitate people who have ideas or want to be a part, be able to connect and get together. There's a calendar of events. There's tools and resources. It can host town hall meetings. So if we wanted to do a live meeting like this, but a Q&A session with your local homeschool community, it would function as a way of letting everyone there be able to be a part of a live conversation. There's no dial-in that's needed or anything like that. There's simply a room that's for it, and then you can start streaming into that room, and people can participate, and there's a chat and everything, and then they can exit when they're done and go back home. But then that same app can house messaging alerts. So if there's bills that we're watching or information that we have that we want to share categorically, if your child has a scholarship, you can see there's a special category for information where parents can talk about those types of things. And if your child doesn't and you don't want to be bothered with all the notifications, you can turn it off so you don't get swamped with all the notifications for that. So there's a lot of functionality that it's going to have.
It would also be a great place for that moment you were describing when you're like, I want to get involved. What do I do? You could sign up, mark your county, and then jump right into the thread for your county and say, hey, I live in Alachua County. How can I get involved? And there would be, our goal is to have ambassadors for each county in the forum moderating those particular threads so that they would know what's going on in the county, and they would know who to connect you with, and give you, kind of handhold you through that initial step of getting connected and involved.
How about interview with candidates that parents can join?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We can open it up.
Our town
we can open it up to others, and I would even love to see it if there is a candidate who's interested in coming in and talking to members of the homeschool community in their area that this might grow to a point where that's something that they're able to do and function as a way of them communicating directly with you.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to say, Discord is not public facing in the same way that our public forum right now is. So all of the information that's currently in the forum, like the FAQs, things that we want to be able to, link on Facebook when someone asks a question or whatever, those we're going to be kind of incrementally copying over into blog posts so that all of that information is still publicly available and accessible for us to resource and for all of you to resource.
And Jesse says, add a list of co-ops, micro schools, hybrid schools, etc. That would be for those areas in the counties. If parents want to share that information with each other, there's a message board that allows parents to accumulate that information and share it there. So there would be a place for that within this. And there's also a way to provide feedback. Man, it would be really useful if we could also do this, or it would be really useful if that. My real hope is that it also, hear me out, can be a place where young people can hang out in a place where their parents are also there with them online. So the parents and the students have access to this place and they can hang out and work on math problems together, or it opens up the option for being able to do virtual things and the parents be involved right there along with their kids. So it's something that there's a lot that it can do eventually. I don't want it to become too overwhelming, but we're going to have to move away from the forum and into something. And I think this gives us that place to springboard options for, hey, we found this mentorship or this apprenticeship is in this county and it works really good for us, and share information like that back and forth and have some of that critical. That's a part of HEF Connect's big mission, is connecting with avenues for success post K-12. So that's also going to be a function of that. And then if there are people who want to do presentations to homeschoolers, this would then function as a place where, hey, they're there. Let's do that. Let's provide that town hall for this. AM Skills. I would love to see AM Skills come and do a presentation in there to homeschoolers from all over Florida about what are some of the credentialings that they offer. What are the boot camps like? How could they connect with other homeschoolers in this area, and then maybe attend one and workshop that and figure out the logistics. And this would be an interactive communication space that would allow for that. And in doing so, it's a lot of work. So we're fun.
Yes.
We are. I have kind of come out of pocket to help build it. And my nephew has volunteered some of his time, and I've worked with him to help. He and I have been kind of going back and forth, putting all the pieces together. But there's no end to volunteer opportunities or moderating. There's
even for helping copy stuff over to the blog. If there's someone who's savvy with the Wix back office and wants to help with that, that's also going to be a massive time commitment. So there's lots of ways to volunteer right now if you would like to.
And even though Jason and Crystal are doing a fantastic job, they're not being paid what they're worth. Let me just put that plug in there, because we could do a better job if they were full-time for home education. But they have other responsibilities. Jason has a marketing business which demands a lot of his time. And so my prayer is that before long, we'll be able to get him full-time doing home education things. And the more time he has, like building the program that he's talking about to benefit homeschoolers, is going to give us a wider audience and more connection and critical mass in the event that any challenge comes against our rights in Florida.
Can I just read this one comment real quick? It's kind of a feel-good comment. I've already answered her question, but I still want to read it. She said, maybe late to the party, but wondering how to have a graduate of homeschool share her story. She was homeschooled exclusively, now pre-law and interning with a law firm and heading to a semester in DC. She would love to enter a Share Your Story to help advocate for family values and faith in homeschool and what that has meant to her in her journey. So I did already respond to this comment with the link to the Tell Your Story project, but I just wanted to read that one out loud for people who are listening and can't necessarily see the comments.
Yeah.
Just because those are the exact kinds of stories that we want to amplify and we
Yes.
want people to hear. So please, if you have something like that, please do submit it. And we do have a link on our website for the Tell Your Story project where you can submit those in writing or video. You can take your pick, whichever one is more comfortable for
everybody, a lot of people feel like maybe the way that I put some recommendations on that page as to how to break your content down so that it can have a flow. That doesn't have to be the only way to do it. I'm trying to keep them under 60 seconds so that they can be reels. But if yours is 3 minutes, we can break it into 1 part, 2 part, 3 part, and people can watch them as part 1, part 2, part 3. So it's not a terrible deal breaker. Don't feel inundated like there's all this stuff I have to do and try to figure out how to make it. Just speak from the heart and put it together. Yeah. And if we have to break it up, we'll break it up.
Video is ideal because we're wanting to have a repertoire of reels and shorts that we can share. But if you just absolutely cannot pull off a video, please still submit it because we can put them as blog posts also.
Pictures and text are fine as well.
Yes. We would rather have your story than not have it. So if you don't want to do a video, feel free to submit a blog post version that's just writing with some pictures.
So the key...
Those stories like the one you just read would be so encouraging to parents who are new to home education because, the big question is, can I do it? Or my kid's going to be successful? And here is a perfect example of a young lady homeschooled all the way through, and now she's going to law school. So encouraging both to parents and to legislators as well.
Yes, fear of the unknown. Everybody says public speaking is the greatest fear, but I think it's fear of the unknown. Because we don't like what we don't understand. In fact, it scares us, and this monster is mysterious, at least. That's how.
For those of you who don't know the lyrics to the Kill the Beast song from Beauty and the Beast, that's that. Pull it up and listen to it.
It's true.
Oddly relative.
True.
Yeah.
They just want to kill the beast. Slay homeschooling. No, we don't get it. Anyway, thank you all so much for your time and attention. We've had a number of viewers today all throughout. And so I just want to say thank you. Thank you especially to our parents who support us by going to flhef.org/support and doing some sort of monthly $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever it is. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you to all the parents who have submitted your stories to the Tell Your Story project. It is started slowly, but they're starting to trickle in, and we love and thank you for all of those, and let's keep that rolling. For any of our people who are going to, I'll finish with this because I'm super excited about this, Brenda. I had a brainstorm moment the other day where I thought, it would be really cool if we could do a giveaway and do like a cool giveaway, like a computer or something cool, like big, and entice people to join the Discord server. And then I called someone from Tampa and I said, hey, do you know, you're in the middle, you're in the mix, you know people. Do you know someone who would be willing to donate a computer to help us with this project? And I explained the Discord server and how we're trying to drive people onto it. And she goes, I do know someone who would do that. I would do that. And I'm like, what? Okay. So Kimberly from the Homeschool Hive has agreed to sponsor our giveaway. And she sent me the specs on the computer that she's donating to us to be able to do that. So at FPEA, we're going to launch a contest for people who come by our booth and they sign up to the Discord server. They'll be entered in a drawing to win that computer. And so thank you to her. And I'm going to say that every week until we get there. And I'm going to have little flyers and QR codes for people to sign up. But I want to give her props because it's just that kind of same thing, that spirit that you have where you just see something and you're like, oh, I can do that. Let's do it together. And you just dove in. It's people like you and her and all the moms and dads in that homeschooling world this is just the spirit of it and how we make things happen. And I appreciate her for doing that, and we look forward to being able to get as many people into that Discord server. We're going to work really hard to get it set up and launched by that date so that we can fill it up with people from all over.
Yes. So
And
I think you've answered the question that was there because someone asked, will you be at the FPEA convention? So yes, we will be there with a contest giveaway and all kinds of other things. We will have a booth. So, if you're going to be there, look for us. We'll be in the expo hall somewhere.
I don't have anything else. I have exhausted, or actually I haven't. I have more to talk about, but we're out of time. We've exhausted the hour is what we've done. So next week is when we'll hit it hard. If you're looking for a legislative update, things are in conference and still behind the scenes being worked on, and we will let you know through one of our social media channels the moment anything moves or happens. Even the staff who I've talked with behind the scenes couldn't give me a timeline as to when things are going to happen. They're like, we don't know yet. We're still constantly working on this and that and the other. So the moment anything happens, they agreed to let me know, and I have agreed to let you know. So.
And they have all our ideas and all of our language and everything we don't like and don't want in the bill.
So
we have really spent a lot of time educating them.
So other than that, I don't have anything additional to add. Is there anything you want to add before we close out for today, Brenda? All right.
No.
We're going to hit our top sponsors one more time at the end of this video and say thank you to Arete, FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, and TBHC Group. And we want to thank again all of the parents across Florida that are parent educators, that take matters into their own hands and lead their own way for their families. We love and support what you do, and we're fighting to be your voice in the Capitol to make sure you always can do that. Y'all have a great Monday, and we'll see y'all next